PropTech Partner Program. My name is Andrew Knight, and I'm part of the Thought Leadership Standard and Regulatory part of RICS. I've been with RICS for nearly 12 years now, and my role is to look at the effect of data and technology right across the built and natural environment. And with over 110,000 members working worldwide, right across the property life cycle through land, planning and development, construction, brokerage, valuation, finance, property management in all its forms, building operations. There's obviously a huge wide canvas upon which data and technology is having a huge impact. And indeed, that's across a multiple set of asset types as well, land itself, residential, commercial, mixed use, alternatives and infrastructure. So once again, a hugely wide area in which data and technology is having a hugely profound effect. And I'm really pleased to have Dhanesh and Vic join me today from Technology Blueprint to have a specific look at one area of our ICS activity, which is our data standards. So Vic and Dhanesh, do please join me.
Hey, Andrew.
Hello, Andrew.
Hi.
Hi.
Great to have you on the call. And I guess it'd be great, perhaps, Vic, just have a quick introduction for perhaps those who didn't view our first conversation about Technology Blueprint and a bit of background on the organisation.
Sure. Yeah. Technology Blueprint. We're I would say a PropTech powerhouse. I reckon that's probably a good way to describe us. We've been building scalable PropTech for, circa 20 years. And we have recently been acquired by the Valaris Group, who are all about building, I think, a bigger and bigger PropTech footprint here in the UK. And so, yeah, we have been doing this for a while. Myself and Dhanesh work closely on our CheckDocs property licensing product, and that product specifically helps people with their compliance burden when it comes to HMO licensing and other types of compliance certification.
Thanks. Well, to go straight to the point, I suppose my first question about the data standard is, why is it good? What are the benefits of this particular data standard as you see it, having worked with it?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I suppose simple interoperability between systems. As soon as you've got a common language to exchange data in, well, guess what? Everything just becomes a bit easier. If we need to integrate with a third party and they're talking the same standard, or we've got some sort of mapping that exists between us, just one computer system talking to another becomes much easier, becomes much faster to do integrations. It's just a really sensible way to work, because if you've got a recognized standard, then everybody knows it's a standard, and we can get on and do our bits independently of each other. If we're working with a remote team, if we're working with a team from another company. So yeah, really helpful from the perspective of being able to connect to other systems and exchange data. I know Dhanesh has worked on this closely, so you might have something to add.
Absolutely. And just like Vic mentioned, it's a common language for systems to really work with, right? And because of that, even from the integration perspective, even from a technical perspective, because it's a common language, any system that would like to integrate with each other, it's going to talk the same language, which means data sharing is going to be much more efficient, which means development is going to be much more efficient. And we can always do parallel development in that case, because let's say system A and system B both are using RICS, both know what kind of data standard we are going to follow, and they both know what kind of data is going to be shared between those two systems. So system A and system B, they don't have to wait for each other to go ahead and use the data. So they can just assume, all right, that is the standard, we'll use that, we get the data in that standard, just run with it and build your application. So it's parallel development as well, which can accelerate a lot of product development going ahead.
And I think if you're you're building something new, then I reckon the standard really delivers even more speed, because I can't think back at how many PropTech applications we've built where we defined our own schema, and spent a hell of a lot of time doing that work. But what RDS gives you is out of the box the entire schema. It covers pretty much most property use cases. And so for people that are developing new applications, well, you've got a schema that you can pull from GitHub and go. That's something that just speeds up everybody's life. If you do that, then you're already based, your app or your new application is already based on that standard. And so interoperability arguably comes out of the box if others are using the same standard. So, it's really powerful in that aspect. I really think the more people that get onto it and start developing, especially new PropTechs that are coming into the scene, it's just really sensible and obvious to use something that's available and that's a standard.
No, it reminds me, I was speaking at a conference yesterday and I made a slightly kind of critical comment about the PropTech scene that ironically, every time you get a new PropTech, you get a new data standard because you get another architecture developed, another kind of silo, which almost goes against the grain of what we're trying to achieve with sort of interoperability and data flowing around, certainly in a governed way, but in an easier way. So it's ironically that the great innovation that's taking place has a danger of just producing yet more islands of data in that way.
Yeah, and it actually doesn't really make very much sense. So it's probably where people have started up, they built something and they didn't know that RDS existed, and then they've got an issue. But I think we'll talk a bit about that too, because I think we've, in our own work with the data standards, we've produced something that can help. If you've already built something but you want to map to the data standard, then we've got something that we've been working on that might help others.
Right. So how actually have you used it? Do help us sort of understand, and bring it alive in terms of how you actually applied it to some of your systems.
Right. So we used it for the CheckDocs property licensing platform, and property licensing here is a system which helps customers manage their HMO compliance burden. So wherever they would, they have a huge portfolio, wherever they would like to know which properties are under risk of requiring a license, our system helps them automatically identify those risks and take actions on that. So with this particular system, with property licensing, there's a lot of data sharing which happens, and even with the integrations that we have with other platforms like PropCo, there's a lot of data sharing that happens between those two systems, a lot of data flowing through and through. And in that particular scenario is where we started using RICS and the RDS, because RDS really helped us format the information in a useful structure, and because it is standards compliant, what it also means is tech as well as humans both can read the data and both can understand how data is structured. So if you have a look at the RDS structure, and if you just go through that structure, if you just go on GitHub, look at the example, just reading through that, even for a human, it's very easy to understand what are the compartments or the buckets where we have the information. And from that perspective, it really helped a lot. And that's where we started using RDS, because as we mentioned in the first section, interoperability and fast integration. So it really helped a lot in that scenario. So what we really have over here is, we can in fact showcase something that we built on our side, which pulls in data. Let's say it just a flat data structure that we have, which has a bunch of information, and we can just convert that information. We built this tool internally, which can just convert that information into a RDS structure. And let me just bring up my screen here, and that should help you see that.
And as you're doing that, I'll just bring it back to what we were saying earlier. This is, I suppose, where you have property data in a format, and you want to map it to the RICS data format. We needed something like that because we're exchanging data with third-party systems, and they're not in the RDS format. We've implemented RDS on the CheckDocs side in our backend, but others perhaps haven't. And so we just thought, well, creating a mapping system, so that we can exchange data with non-RDS compliant systems, but using the RDS profile.
Yeah,
that really made sense to us.
Right. So I'm just sharing my screen, and what we're looking at right now is a small tool, an API that we have built, which is basically converting into RICS, right? And if you look at this, we have this flat data structure where we have a property item which has certain details, for example, the license certificate number and the conditions, along with the local authority information, as well as the address data and certain other details over here. with the name of the property managers and other things. So with this flat data structure that we have, with just this tool, if we just hit send over here, it should automatically convert that into the RDS structure. So if we just hit send here, there you go. So
Oh yeah.
we have RICS buildings, right? Now,
Yeah.
if we look at the RDS structure, it starts off with the RICS data transfer because that's what the root element we have. Over here, we have ensured that it starts with RICS building so that we can decide on our side, on the application side, what would be the root key we would like, right? So RICS data standard is what data transfer, sorry, is what we would just plug in. And against that, we will just put in the standard. So we have RICS buildings, which has the certificates, which has certificate details, the end date, the GUID, issue date, and all of those things, along with the participants. We've got Vic here.
Right.
And we also have the GUIDs, the UPRNs, the building
Yeah.
IDs for this particular property, as well as some other data, which was, so this is what we came up with based on the RDS standard. So we came up with this because we wanted to add some of our information here.
Yep.
And then again, we come back to the participants for those property, which is the branch, which is the legal entity for us, with the
Yep.
PPLs, which is the property manager here. And finally, we have the property address details in the Excel format as well. So we have the administrative area IDs, the name, along with the locality name, and the postcode, all of that really built up here. And then finally, we have the room summary under the building, which is just telling us how many bedrooms and kitchens. So just like I was mentioning a while ago, even looking at this, even from a human perspective, it's quite easy to understand because we have a
Mm.
property which has an address which has again which has a country which is England, and then under the country we have an administrative area called Warwick, and under Warwick we have Leamington Brunswick as the ward, and we have the postcode and as well as the road name. So it's very easy to understand from a human perspective how the data is laid out because it's all hierarchical, and it really helps a lot to for these other systems as well because we know what the standard is, what the common language is. So that's the tool that we have built, which will convert any flat data structure we have into an RDS one. And the beauty of this is now we have a certain set of keywords here. These are not the only keywords that this tool will allow you to use because the way we have developed this tool, it allows you to define your own keywords as well over here or keys. So let's say we have a number of sleeping rooms here. Maybe on someone else's system, it might be bedroom count, right?
Yeah.
And in that case, you can just change the a small configuration file that we have, just change that to whatever field name you have, and voila, you're done. You will automatically pull up the bedroom count and put that right here at the bottom under room summary. So now this is the tool that we built to make not only our lives easier, but I think going ahead, this will make a lot of other people's life easier when they want to integrate RDS. Because with this particular tool, they don't really have to worry about changing their schema, right? All they need to worry about is bringing in this dependency, running it against the data that they have, and they are RICS compliant, at least for the data sharing part. And then that can slowly trickle down to the other parts of the system. But this is a very good starting point for any system to become RICS compliant or RDS compliant.
As you
And once
say,
you've got the mapping configuration, whatever your source system is, you're going to be able to convert from that to RDS via the tool. So it really is just the creation of a mapping configuration.
Yeah, and I suppose that if it's worth commenting that, as you said, that, the depth and breadth of the RDS, I think because it's based on sort of almost real world standards, it's hopefully fairly intuitive in terms of the kind of objects or elements, to use a technical phrase, that are there, because it's about real world participants, buildings, certificates. It's designed in a hopefully in a kind of human friendly way, isn't it? Because it's talking about these real world objects with the kind of terms and nomenclature which are hopefully sort of familiar to people.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And another thing that RDS really helped us with was, because there's a standard, there's a lot of keywords in here which I think make a lot of sense compared to what we had on our side. So RDS also inspired us to make sure that even our fields that we have, or the way we are building new technology, we use field names which are very common, which are very intuitive for anyone to read. So a very good example here is a room summary, right? So room summary is very intuitive because it's a summary about all the rooms that you have. And if you compare that with the structure that we had, we just had a flat structure with a number of bedrooms, number of kitchens, number of shared kitchens, and all of that, right? So it's a structure which just flat structure which keeps on increasing in length and not in breadth. But in this case, I think the length and breadth for the RDS structure itself is so intuitive and so much better than just a flat structure. It really helps a lot from all perspectives.
Yeah, and I think another thing that we thought about when we were developing this was the fact that if you kind of hardwire a field that just says bedrooms, you lack that
Yeah,
flexibility as the way buildings develop, and you get different kinds of rooms. It made more sense
absolutely.
to have that as a kind of a enumeration of what kind of room are we talking about, because it's hard to prejudge, particularly if you think internationally. The way people
Yeah,
talk about rooms and spaces is an ever evolving thing,
yeah,
really. So I think that's another reason why you don't want just to have a field called number of bedrooms, because it's
Mm.
very hardwired, if I can use that term.
Mm. Well, it's great
absolutely.
because you've done you've done a bunch of thinking and design around this that perhaps people will stumble over later. If you're going to build UK PropTech, for example, you probably have a good idea of what your schema needs to look like here. But as soon as you want to go to another territory, oh, now we've got a problem. We have to expand our scheme, we have to do some work. And so, the fact that RICS have done that thinking and put the design in, I mean, we'd struggled to find anything that wasn't covered, is what I would say. I think there was something, something very unique to our use case that wasn't there.
Yeah.
We needed to have a couple of fields, but yeah, it was difficult to actually find anything that wasn't in the standard.
Well,
And the
that's
beauty of
good
the
to hear.
standard,
And sorry, Dhanesh, to carry on.
oh, sorry, just wanted to add in the beauty of that standard is even though it has covered almost everything, even with our use case that we had, which was very specific, RDS still gave us the flexibility to incorporate that within the same structure. For example, what we're looking at here, under other data, if you look at data standard, it allows you to add in a bunch of objects in here. RICS participants is one of those, but it also gives you a wildcard, which tells you that if you want to add something more of your own, you can just use that wildcard reference and just add in. So audit result here, which is very specific to our use case, which says now this property is a licensed property. For these things, we just came up with our specific use case over here and done. It's part of the RICS structure that we have, or the RICS data standard that we have. So this flexibility really helps a lot as well.
Yeah. No, and it's probably worth highlighting from our side. One thing that we thought very heavily about was the trying to make it as generic and international as possible. And I think of one example where we avoided words like lease or tenant, because you end up sometimes using words that are perhaps very kind of UK or Anglo-Saxon focused, like a lease or freehold. And the danger then is you build something which works very well for one territory, but then doesn't work at all for another territory, because you've used those kind of words that are very, very specific, particularly around kind of legal constructions and things like that. So I think that was one thing we tried to do to keep the kind of objects as portable as possible from that kind of perspective.
Yeah, I think that's really worked.
So what's the future? What other things do you think that you'll be doing with it, and what do you see of the future, the way you're going to adopt and integrate it further?
Oh, I think there's a couple of things there. This the mapping migration tool. We could. I think we're planning to open source that, so we will likely contribute that. Maybe that can go into the RICS repository and GitHub, and others can. Yeah, others can use that. Can advance it. That would be something good. But I think really, I don't know, me and Dhanesh have been talking about this quite a lot. I think we will step forward now and produce a backend as a service, a set of APIs that anybody that's coming into the market building something new can literally just consume from our hosted environment. I mean, if you imagine, for young startups to be able to just subscribe to an API that has a complete property backend as a service based on the RDS standard, sounds like a neat idea to me. So I think, yeah, that's something that we're pretty keen on. So we've been talking about that quite a bit. We have the beginning of it, I think.
Okay. No, I mean,
How far
I
back?
think for a sector that is so fragmented, you know, we need, dare I say it, for the techies who are viewing this, the kind of the Linux of property data, don't we? We need something that is just open source and is developed with the market and is there for people to use and package up and just reduce the friction really in terms of the way data moves around.
Yeah. Well, I think it would be a great speed up for UK PropTech and PropTech worldwide. If there's something like that, it's straight out of the box. It's available as a service. That would be a great thing.
Yeah, you mentioned, Andrew, about the fragmentation of data, and that really hit really well because when we started working with this data standard and we started developing this tool for our system, one of the first things that we really did was look at the PDF that we have on GitHub, which gives you a brief summary of what RDS is and how you use it. And I think one of the statements there mentions, I'm just paraphrasing here, what it mentions is it really doesn't really matter what kind of data is being stored by different systems or how it is being stored in the system. What really matters is how it is being shared between systems, because that is the most important part we need to worry about. And that is where RDS really does a great job in making sure that no matter what you have on your system, fine, it works perfectly for you. It might work perfectly for your systems, and the schema is so great for your use case. You don't really have to make a change. That is completely fine. But when you share that same data with someone else, if you use this common language, it's really going to propel development cycles everywhere. And PropTech is really going to get a huge boom if we start sticking to the RDS structure. And everyone will be, if everyone jumps on the same train, I don't know. I mean, it's going to be very short time before PropTech takes off like anything in the UK, or rather anywhere really, to be very honest.
Indeed. No, I think you've hit on a very important point there, because I think sometimes people look at the RDS and say, "Oh, you're telling us now we need to throw everything in the wastebasket and start again." And I always say, no, that's not what it's intended to do. If you are building something new, great, look at it and see how you can use it as your architecture, as you've done. But actually, if you've got a system that's working well and it does what you need, this is just a translation piece for you, the common language for you to talk to other systems. But there's no requirement to throw what you've done in the bin, in the rubbish tip. It's not about that. It's not about saying to people, you're wrong, start again. It's saying, look, here's a way of talking. And if you are going to build a new system, as you said, Vic, earlier, don't reinvent the wheel. Don't spend so much time thinking about your architecture and the way you call things, because as you said, it's 95% of what people want for kind of property type applications. So
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, I think on that absolutely note, I think I'm going to thank you both for your time this morning. It's been brilliant, and it's really been excellent to see it brought alive in this way, because sometimes it can be hard to bring alive what's quite a technical subject, and and it's a large standard, as you know, it's a large amount of code in terms of elements and objects, but it's great to just see it brought alive and to talk through the real world benefits as aside from the technical issues. So for today, Vic, Dhanesh, it's been great to talk. Thanks very much, and look forward to catching up again soon, and let's continue the good work.
Great.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Andrew.
Cheers. Thanks.